In the last video, the link will be below in the description. We talked about why emotional regulation in children, it's not something you can demand from them. It is something they borrow from you. Today, I'd like to talk about the harder part. What if you were never trained to regulate? What if no one ever showed you that this was even a skill you were supposed to practice? Because here is the part. Most parenting advice misses you can't work on something if you don't know it exists. And many parents don't fail at teaching emotional regulation. They never realize it's something that needs to be taught at all. Let me be very direct for a moment. Most parents will never encounter this idea, not because they're bad parents, but because this isn't how parenting is usually framed. Some parents will stumble upon this video, they'll listen, they'll nod, and then nothing will change. Not because they can't, not because they disagree, but because insight without practice doesn't rewire a system. And then there is a much smaller group, parents who will listen, and they will decide to spend 3 to 5 minutes a day practicing something that feels invisible, unglamorous, and to be honest, slow, simply because they understand that small, consistent inputs compound. If you're in that group, I respect that because this work isn't about feeling good. It's about building capacity where it actually matters before it's needed. If you grew up in an environment where emotions were ignored, rushed, or overridden, you don't think in terms of training regulation. You think in terms of stopping a behavior, restoring order, and moving on. So there is no intentional practice, no repetition, no skill building loop. Not because parents don't care, but because no one ever told them this was learnable, trainable, improvable. This video is about closing that gap without guilt, without perfection, and without shortcuts that feel good now and cost later. Emotional regulation is not something that you decide in the moment. It is a capacity, and capacity is built before the pressure arrives. If the only time you think about regulation is when your child is already melting down, you are trying to install a braking system while the car is already skidding. So the work here happens outside the crisis. It's quiet, it's daily, it's almost boring. And that's how real systems are built. In engineering, there is a component called a capacitor. A capacitor doesn't eliminate energy. It doesn't fight it. It stores it temporarily, safely, until the system can release it in a controlled way. Without capacitors, circuits become noisy, unstable, unpredictable under load. And emotional regulation works in the same way. A regulated nervous system has emotional capacities. It can absorb frustration, anger, chaos, and stress without immediately damping that energy back into the environment. And this is important. This is not bottling things up until you explode. A capacitor doesn't store energy forever. It releases it, just not all at once and not in the way that damages the system. Emotional regulation works the same way. You still process what you feel, you still release it, but you do it deliberately and over time in ways that are constructive instead of reactive. Regulation is not suppression, it's controlled discharge. An untrained system has low capacity, it overloads quickly, and when it does, it discharges outward. It raises the voice, snapping, shutting down, rushing to control. Your child doesn't need you to eliminate emotion, they need you to buffer them. And capacitance is not a mindset, it's built through a repeated and intentional practice. Why some shortcuts feel good and why they backfire? Shortcuts work because they reduce your discomfort fast. Yelling ends the noise. Distraction stops the feeling. Threats restore control. They're efficient, but efficiency is not stability. Every shortcut quietly teaches your nervous system, I cannot tolerate this state for very long. And whatever you can tolerate, your child never learns to tolerate either. So instead of chasing perfect responses, we focus on building capacity. So what does progress actually look like? Progress doesn't look like perfect calm. It looks like slower reactions, smaller spikes, shorter escalations, faster recovery, less shame afterward. In engineering terms, you're not eliminating noise, you are increasing the system's ability to absorb it. You do not become a regulated parent by trying harder in the hardest moments.